Here we are, finally in meeting 3, right? So we've learned a lot so far through the session. And one of the things that I want to really share is meeting 3, in my opinion, becomes the most important meeting that we can have as an advisor with the accounting firm. So I want you to think about it this way. As we've gone through the process so far, the first part of the process are things that as advisors we've really learned to do and been taught to do throughout our career as financial advisors. At this point in the juncture of our relationship with the CPA, this is where what we need to do becomes a little bit uncomfortable because we're forced to begin to take a leadership role within this particular relationship. So I want you to think about it this way. We went through our first meeting, right? And as you know at this point, the whole purpose of our first meeting is simply to listen, to get to know the CPA, to build rapport, and as you know, most importantly, the real goal is simply to get the second meeting. We now know the second meeting is in our office. And at this point in your career, it should be very, very simple for you to share with the CPA exactly what you do and how you work. So we go through the office visit, we show them how we're better and how we're different than the competition. My opinion is most of us can do a fantastic job with that. When you've gone through that office visit and finally get to go to lunch, we're going to ask that question, right? And at this point, we know that question is, so what'd you think? We're going to hear some positive feedback. We're not going to move too quickly. We're going to push that check back. And now here we finally are at meeting 3. So the reason I take you back and bring you to where we are today is the reality of the situation is those first 2 meetings are really simple to do. At this point, this is where we need to begin, as I said a moment ago, to truly start to lead the CPA or the accountant, and this is where it becomes a slight bit uncomfortable for you. If I could use an analogy, it's kind of like dating. Go back to your dating years, or maybe you're still dating now, and the first date, right, is generally a pretty non-threatening date. Although we're a little nervous, we make small talk, we get to know each other a little bit, and generally first dates, not always, but first dates generally go pretty well. If we're lucky enough to get that second date, right, so for the guys in the room, at the end of that second date, we really got to know each other. We maybe started to ask some more personal questions. We let that person in, and maybe your date let you into their life a little bit. And now where we are in the process, guys, is we just walked your young lady to the car, and we're really deciding whether or not we should go in for the kiss, right? And guys who are listening to this, that's the scariest part of the dating process, right? We went through those first couple of interactions together. We're now thinking, do we go in for the kiss? Do we ask for the handshake? Do we give a kiss on the cheek and a hug? Or do we go for the gusto and do we go for the real kiss? So here's why I share that with you. What you need to do in the meeting that we're about to talk about, our third meeting, is you really need to use your sales acumen. You need to use your own skill set to determine how engaged this accounting firm is, or potentially they might not be as engaged as we hope. And there's different courses of action or a different way that we can take this meeting based on how that CPA is how your vibes are, I should say, from that CPA as a whole. So hopefully that makes some sense, and I can share with you in coaching for many, many years, when we do our ongoing coaching calls with advisors, this is generally where we usually have our first issues with advisors, where they get stuck. And they get stuck because I can't totally script this for you. I can't tell you exactly what to do in this third meeting because, again, there's another person involved, the accountant, and he or she has a certain level of engagement that only you will know. So you really have to be at a point where you're understanding where they're at and take the lead from them. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. It's really important that you understand that. So when I think about meeting 3, guys, here's the whole purpose of meeting 3. The meeting of 3 is to start to show them that you have a plan. I like to say, if you have a plan, someone will follow you, right? So think about it. Think about history. If I go back into history, there are leaders in history who had a plan. Sometimes the plans weren't even so good. But when you have a plan and you have conviction and you know where you're going, many times people will follow you because they truly believe that if they follow you, they'll get to where they ultimately want to go. Right? So think about that for a minute. One of the real benefits of our program is we arm you with a plan. Advisors go wrong because they generally have a meeting or two, they shake hands, they say something like, let's share referrals. If you come across someone who can benefit from what I do, I'll refer them to you as the financial advisor. I'll ask you to do the same as a CPA. We shake hands, we part ways, maybe we exchange business cards, and then nothing happens. So this relationship is a little bit different because I'm teaching you, our program teaches you how to have a plan in place. And really what we're trying to do in this meeting is get the CPA to commit to do something, right? That's what we want them to do. We want them to dip their foot in the pool before they dive in. We really want to get them to meet with us on a consistent basis. That's my goal. My goal is to get them to agree to a weekly or a bi-weekly interaction so we can begin to move that relationship forward. So think about it this way, guys. We've got to assess where that accountant is. Where is his or her head? How engaged are they? What have their buy-ins been like, right? How bought in are they? And then depending on whether or not you assess them as being very engaged and wanting to move forward in a true alliance or needing to move along a lot more slowly, we'll then make a decision as how we ultimately proceed. So as you can see on your screen, I've got two scripts that I've developed. So when we start meeting 3, and by the way, meeting 3 can be done in neutral territory, right? I really believe it's important. Meeting 1 is at the accountant's office. Meeting 2 is preferably at your office. If you can't be that way and you need to bring meeting 2, the office visit, to their office, it's okay, but I'd prefer them to check out your operation. Lunch, we've already talked about, is in a regular restaurant. Meeting 3 can be neutral. It can be done at a restaurant. It can be done at the CPA's office. It can be done at your own office. It's really wherever is most convenient for the CPA or the accounting firm from my perspective. So the script that I want to revisit first is the same way that we actually ended our lunch meeting. So if you recall, we talked about really what I call setting the table, I should say, for meeting 3. So in the setting the table for meeting 3 script, we close that second meeting that way while we're at the restaurant at lunch. The concept now is we want to reiterate that. Now guys, I want you to understand the reason we sometimes say the same thing more than once is because it's really, really important, and we want to make sure that the accountant, the person that we're communicating with, is really hearing and begins to internalize what it is that we're trying to get across. And I call it getting them on the yes train. If we say something and someone shakes their head enough, eventually they are going to start to follow. And that's the whole purpose of our program, is to really help them understand that we have that plan. So I'm going to put the script again up on the screen. Again, the title of this script is Setting the Table for Meeting 3. So when we look at this script, I just simply want you to reiterate what this script says when we begin our meeting 3. So I'm going to say something along these lines. Mr. and Mrs. CPA, here we are. It's our third interaction together. And I want to start today's meeting with where we ended our last meeting. And if you recall, one of the last things that we spoke about when we had met last is that we both thought that we were moving in a good direction, and the fact that we've gotten to know each other, gotten to know about each other's practices, and really are starting to feel comfortable with each other is a great place for us to be. Although we both might need to still do a little bit more due diligence, here's where we are in the process. we've really agreed that there are two things that are important. The first piece that's important is that you and I ensure that it's really critical as business people that in order for this relationship to work and for us to help as many of our clients as possible, that we need to meet on a consistent basis. So one of the things, again, that I want to accomplish today is to try to find a mutually convenient time where we could meet no less than on an every other week basis, preferably weekly if we could. And my promise to you is that I will make it as simple as possible and as convenient as possible for you. I'd be happy to come to your office, and I'd be happy to spend 15 to 20 minutes together on a weekly or at the very least a bi-weekly basis. The second piece is we agreed that it was important to really make sure that we understand what the end game is, right? So really to understand where it is that we're trying to head and to create some type of plan so that we know where it is that we're heading. So I just wanted to kind of start our meeting off that way, and then I wanted to really walk you through what some of the thoughts are that I have. Before I go there, were there any thoughts that you had? Okay, so I'm at a script now, guys. I'm back to speaking to you, the advisor who's learning this process. It's really important that you reiterate and state the purpose of the meeting. I'm a big believer in making sure that whoever the audience is, that the audience knows where it is that we're trying to go, right? So once we reiterate where we are now in the process, I'm going to throw another script up there. And here we have to assess, as I mentioned earlier, how ready this accountant is. Are they someone who needs to be brought along slowly, or are they someone who's really excited? And just remember, all you're hearing right now is what my words are. You're hearing the role of the financial advisor. What you're not hearing is what the accountant is saying. And remember, in any of the meetings that we have, the accountant should be doing 70% of the speaking, and you should be doing 30% of the speaking. So there's another live person interacting, and you're going to have to take your cues from that individual. So what we've done is we've realized that we have to approach the situation in one or two ways, right? And I've created two scripts. One is what I will call script A, and the other is what I will call script B. And the real concept here is to be in a position that we are able to bring either a CPA along slowly, or if we have someone who's more engaged, that we can really start to get into the business planning and the creating of a marketing plan, etc. So I'm going to start with the script on your screen that's really for a CPA who needs to be brought along a little bit slowly. So our business opportunity discussion, trying to get the CPA committed, option A, which again is for a CPA who's not ready for the marketing and business opportunity discussion yet and needs to be brought along slowly. And guys, I would share with you probably 60% of the time, this is going to be the script that we use in this meeting, right? So we're not going to always get these really, really strong buy signals. A lot of the time, we're going to have to bring that CPA along slowly. So here we go. Ken, I wanted to share with you how excited I am that you and I have had the opportunity over the last couple of months or weeks to really get to know each other and to learn about each other's practices. It's rare that you find another professional that has similar business ethics and integrity. I truly believe that you and I can create a better overall client experience for each of our client bases if we collaborate together. And I wanted to have a discussion with you today to discuss how we can begin to dip our foot in the pool before we dive in. If it's okay, I wanted to brainstorm some ideas together as some good conservative first steps to get started. So guys, I'm going to pause here and go out of script for a minute. As you can see from the script, what I'm really doing again is I'm setting the stage. So I'm sharing with the CPA that I'm excited, I think we're in a good place, etc. And that at this point, I want to begin to brainstorm. Now understand you're actually giving the CPA an opportunity to disagree, right? You're giving the CPA the opportunity to say, I'm not where you are right now, John. I'm not ready to take that next step. I need to do more due diligence, etc. So if they don't say that and they nod their head and they smile and they agree with you and say, I agree, we should go slowly, dip our foot in the pool, we're right where we want to be. Now, in this particular part of our process, all that I want you to focus on, the most important thing here is to get the CPA to do anything. I'm going to repeat that. The most important thing to do here is to get the CPA to do anything. I really don't care what it is. I want them to simply push the ball forward. I want them to make some small decision that allows you and that CPA to continue to work together. Now, you at this point will have had 3 hours, if not more, of conversation with the CPA, so you should have a really good understanding of what their comfort level is. So I'm going to give you some ideas, okay? Now, you're not to list all of these ideas. You're simply to come up with one or two that they would be comfortable with. And it's okay to share with the CPA or the accountant at this point that really what I want you to do is I want you to pick one small thing that you would be comfortable with. And what I really want, guys, is I want that accountant to get to see you in action, because here's what I know, is if they get the opportunity to see you in action, they're going to like what they see. They're going to start to envision themselves or their clients. So back to the script. So a couple of the examples of small first steps could be, I can do a complimentary portfolio review for you. Could also be, you can consider calling a few of your clients that you have a strong relationship with and have me do a complimentary portfolio review for them. This would allow you to observe me in a meeting and also give yourself an opportunity to solicit feedback from some of your trusted clients. Another example could be, call 10 or so of your trusted clients and get their opinion in regards to you getting involved in integrating financial services into your tax practice. You can sort of create an advisory council to solicit feedback. Another example, guys, and again, these are just examples, could be allow me to sponsor a small private dining event for 10 of your clients. There would be no business discussed at dinner. It could be another way to solicit feedback and sort of advisory council. Another example, I could sponsor an educational financial services workshop in which you could invite clients. Lastly, you can have me sponsor and become a guest speaker at a client appreciation event for your clients. Now, again, guys, my thought here is I want you to choose something that you think they're going to be agreeable with. Other examples can be, I just listed a few on your screen. You can do a review of the CPA firm's qualified retirement plan. You can help the CPA create a questionnaire that they can send to some of their top clients to determine whether or not their clients would be interested in you becoming or in them actually offering financial services within their practice. You can invite them to come to one of your workshops. If you happen to have a marketing event for your client base, a dinner seminar, a client appreciation event, some type of event, you can ask the CPA to come to just simply observe you in action. So depending on the engagement level, you can pick something as bold as let's do a client appreciation event for your clients, or why don't you become my client, or you can be as passive as why don't you come and check me out in action and observe one of my seminars, or even sit in one of my review meetings with an existing client. So you can be creative here, guys. The key is, as I said before, all we're trying to do is get them to make a step that they will be comfortable with, that will not make them feel uncomfortable. And I want you to understand how important that is, because if you push too hard here, you may push them away. And I've said a bunch of times, working with CPAs is not a sprint, but it's a marathon. So you have to really use your sales skills and your sales ability here. Okay? All I want at the end of this meeting is I want the relationship to continue, them to make a small step. Guys, as far as I'm concerned, the small step meaning if they commit to meet with you on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, even if they don't want to do an event or they don't want to do any of the few things that I suggested that you saw on your screen a moment ago, I'm absolutely okay with that. At this point in time, all that I care about is that they want to meet with you on a consistent basis. If they meet you on a consistent basis, they will learn to like you, they will learn to trust you, and they will want to help you. The laws of what I call reciprocity will begin to engage, and the better that they get to know you, the more likely they are to refer you. This is a long journey, not a short sprint, and if you can influence that one thing, them meeting with you regularly, you will be hugely successful. Okay? And I want you to have that in your mind. I want you to understand that, and I want you to forget what you've learned up to this point as a financial advisor, which is it's about getting the deal closed. It's about getting the prospective client to act in that second or third meeting. This is not a transaction, guys. This is a long-term relationship, and it's really, really critical that you understand that you're not failing if they don't give you referrals right away, or they don't say, I want to join your alliance program. That's not failure. Failure to me is, I want you to think about it this way, guys. This particular accountant at this stage of the game allowed you to come to their office and spend an hour in their office. After spending an hour in their office, they agreed to come to your office. So they liked you enough to come to your office. After they went to your office and heard what you did, they liked you enough to have lunch with you. After they had lunch with you, or during lunch probably, they most likely told you some really nice things, and then they agreed to meet again. So again, to go back to my dating analogy, your date likes you. There's something there. So we can either push too hard and push them away, right? Or we can push at the right level and get that third and fourth and fifth and seventh and 10th and 20th date. And if we keep getting those dates, guys, eventually the relationship will progress, right? If you continue to follow our system and you educate them in those meetings. So I want to be really, really clear. I want them to make a step if they're ready to make a step. They're not ready to make a step, I'm absolutely okay with them simply agreeing to meet with you on a regular basis. Either of those outcomes, one of those two outcomes, either one, preferably both, but either one of those outcomes, as long as one is meeting regularly, is absolutely okay. Okay. So I'm going to shift gears now, and I'm going to shift to a secondary script, which is designed for a CPA or accountant who is more engaged, who at that lunch meeting is starting to give you strong buying signals. They wanted to give you a referral. They're asking about your alliance program. They're saying things like, where do we go from here, right? And truly, 40% of the time, in my experience, that's what you'll experience at your lunch meeting. So now we're sitting in meeting 3. We're going to start it out the same way, going back to laying the groundwork, right, of the two pieces that are really important to make sure that that relationship progresses. Those two pieces, again, are beginning to meet on a regular basis, weekly or bi-weekly. Hopefully, you're hearing how much I'm stressing that at this point and how critical that is to your success. And the second is beginning to plan what the end goal is. What's the end in mind? What's our planning going to look like? How are we going to become successful? So I want you to think about it in those terms, and I'm going to put the secondary script up there now as well, which again is really for that more engaged accountant at this point in time. So business opportunity, getting the CPA commitment, option B, again, is going to be for a CPA who's much more engaged. It's for a very engaged CPA who's ready for the marketing and business opportunity discussion. So guys, before I go into this particular script, here's what I want you to really understand. This is where you wanted to go. This and our next meeting in actuality is where most advisors want to go right away, right? And that's the mistake we make as advisors is we want to do this the first time we meet a CPA. So we've now been patient enough. We have the CPA engaged. We've pushed the check back a bunch of times, and they're finally ready to hear this because they're saying buying signals. They're telling us, where do we go from here, right? They're asking leading questions. So only then can we go there. And I mentioned it many times throughout my training day here. It's really important that you use your sales acumen and that you take the cues from the CPAs. The decision as to whether to use the A script, which we've already talked about, or the B script, which is up on your screen, that decision, guys, is absolutely paramount to the success that you're going to have. The wrong decision here can doom the relationship. And at that point, when we push too hard, if we use the wrong script and the wrong verbiage, that's when the CPA stops returning your calls. The problem is they don't tell you that's why they stop returning your calls. That's why I'm here. I've made that mistake, guys, in my own business as I've pursued CPAs many times. That's a mistake that advisors make all the time, pushing too hard. So how you assess is critically important. I'd rather you go slow than too fast. So Ken, I wanted to share with you how excited I am that you and I have had the opportunity over the last couple of weeks or months to really get to know each other and learn about each other's practice. It's rare that you find another professional that has similar business ethics and integrity. I truly believe that you and I can create a better overall client experience for each of our client bases if we collaborate together. And I wanted to have a discussion with you today to choose which option would be best for us to work together going forward. Although we've touched on this before, I wanted to go deeper and really discuss the potential financial impact each option could have on your practice to help you choose what might be the best fit for you. Specifically, how we can create a marketing plan to successfully integrate financial planning into your practice. Based on our discussions, I've created a draft of a marketing plan and a spreadsheet to illustrate a reasonable expectation of the revenue you can generate by offering your clients financial planning. Walk the CPA through the sample joint marketing and integration plan if appropriate. So, little bit stronger language, guys, right? Again, this is for a CPA who's really excited and that we believe is going to be a candidate very shortly for our Alliance program, or that simply has given us a great indication of interest that they want to implement this and help their clients. So where we're going to shift gears to now, guys, is basically helping them now see the plan. So what I now want to arm you with is the opportunity to educate them in this meeting and actually give them a true marketing plan. So one of the things that we'll provide you with as part of our training, and we're going to send information, in my wrap-up I'll share that with you, but we're going to share with you, I should say, an editable version of a joint marketing plan. Okay, and I'm going to walk you through that today as well so that you understand what that's going to look like. So again, I'm going to put that up on the screen. Before I put it up on the screen, here's what I want you to think about. Okay? Who has this? Who actually, I want you to think about it from the CPA's perspective. They met you in their office, came, checked out your operation, had lunch. Now they're sitting in a meeting and you're about to present them with a 7 or 8 page marketing plan. So earlier I talked about the fact that if you have a plan, someone will follow you. Generally, advisors fail because they don't know how to keep pushing the ball forward. They don't know what the next step is. So what we arm you with is here's a marketing plan. Now you may take my marketing plan and change it and enhance it and put your own flavor into it. But I'm going to give you the basis of it so you can walk the CPA through it and help that CPA actually see that you have a plan in place. And if they follow you, they're ultimately going to be successful. I want to hit that point, and I want you to think about this from a sales perspective. At this point in time, if the CPA is beginning to get excited about it, he or she is thinking this could be good for their clients, he or she is thinking that they can potentially create another revenue stream in their practice, which, as we know, for many CPAs is necessary and important in today's economy. It's very, very reasonable. In fact, it's human nature for them to now begin to doubt themselves, right? So you have this kind of highs and lows in sales. So we got them excited. They're visualizing that this could be good for their clients and for their practice. It's human nature for them now to ask themselves questions like, will my clients actually follow me? Will my clients actually do what I say? Do I have as good enough of a relationship as John, the financial advisor, thinks? How will I actually get clients to these events that John's about to talk about? How will I actually ask for referrals? Are my clients high net worth enough? You guys see where I'm going? So it's our job now to turn our leadership hat on and really help them see how this is possible, to kind of lower the expectations and to ultimately put the success and failure of how this relationship will work on you as the advisor, and kind of let them off the hook a little bit and let them understand that you realize that this is going to take some work. Not every client's going to be an ideal client, and that we want to do things in a way that the advisor, you, are going to take the responsibility for the successes and for the failures of this. So we're going to walk through the sample marketing plan, and I want you to, as I go through it with you, I want you to think about what the CPA will be thinking as they view the marketing plan. So as you can see, we have our marketing plan up on the screen here, and I want you to think about it, right? As I said a minute ago, what's the CPA going to be thinking, right? Who does this stuff? Only you do. Only folks who've gone through my program would actually be this prepared at this point in time. It is critically important that you share with the CPA that this particular marketing plan that we're about to go through is something that you put together, and it is meant to be for illustrative purposes only. They're ideas. You don't expect the CPA and you in this relationship to implement all of them, but you want to pick one or two or maybe three conservative steps to ultimately get started. The most important thing about this marketing plan, it's not necessarily that he or she agree to all of the pieces that we're going to talk about, but what I want them to see is that you've really thought this through, and I want them to begin to buy into you as a leader. Really, really important that you understand that this isn't to get them to say, great, I will do everything you say, John. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to be able to get them to see that you have a well thought out plan, and they can visualize that if they follow you and some of this, that they'll ultimately get to where they want to go. So let's go through some of this so that you understand what we're presenting. So as you think about it, again, I think the CPA is going to be very impressed. I even tell you here, and it's the first thing you should read to the CPA, that this is a general outline of a marketing plan intended to provide ideas and options for integrating financial planning into your practice. We should personalize it for your own comfort level. So the objective is to expand the scope of the services currently available to tax clients by integrating financial planning into your current tax practice in order to better serve our clients in a more complete fashion. We then will talk about our approach. Critical part again is meeting weekly or bi-weekly. Establish a schedule of weekly face-to-face meetings between Ken and John, where we will spend time learning more about how we can help each other's clients. In addition, we'll discuss the best ways for us to build a successful joint venture. And there are some of the examples. And listen, guys, when you present this to the accountant, really important, you're not reading it to them. You're educating them on how to create a marketing plan. So at this juncture, I would say something to the CPA like, so I'm going to list off some ideas that I have. Feel free to share any other ideas that you may have, and let's pick one or two that you might be comfortable with so we can begin to start this process in a slow, steady fashion. Okay, really important point. So a couple of those ideas might be, we could discuss how to approach clients. Could be an announcement letter. We could be spending some time going through case analysis. What do I mean when I say case analysis, guys? And you'll get this on one of our webinars. We've actually created a case analysis. Okay, so when I say that is we took Mr. and Mrs. Jones and made up a fictitious client, a fictitious couple with all different planning needs, so that you can review this with the CPA and be able to help he or she begin to identify opportunities based on a set of circumstances with a financial planning client. Right? Really important, because what our job is going to be to educate the accountant on how to spot opportunities. The better you educate that accountant, the more likely you get referrals. Okay? And I'll tell you a couple of stories a little bit later on as well that will help to bring that to light in our webinar series once we begin the monthly webinars down the road for this particular group. So proactive calls would be another example, client appreciation events, mailings to their client base, newsletters, emails, private dining events, educational seminars. So as you can see from an approach perspective, there are many, many different ways to approach. What we're trying to show the CPAs is that we've thought of many ideas and to solicit their feedback. As we continue with the marketing plan, we'll talk about our meeting agenda. So during the weekly meetings, the topics and expectations can include things like calling the CPA's client base, to CPA to call targeted clients to offer a financial audit, the use of a complimentary portfolio review certificate. And I'm going to bring that up on the screen as well. This is something that we'll also send you an editable version of. Here's a complimentary portfolio review certificate. Bring it to your own compliance department. Make sure your compliance department approves it. But imagine how the CPA feels when they're able to see you hand them what you see on your screen right now and say, I took the liberty of putting together a complimentary portfolio review certificate that you can give to your clients during tax season. You can put in your lobby. You can mail when you have clients that that you mail them their tax returns. This can become a mailer. The CPA is hopefully sitting there going, wow, John's got a plan. John's got this all figured out for me. All I need to do is follow his lead and I'm going to be successful. Okay? Hopefully you guys are seeing that. Targeted mailings, client appreciation dinners. Again, I'll bring up on the screen. We'll also send you an editable version. Here's a sample of a client appreciation seminar invitation. And you can have on there already the CPA's name or the name of their firm, a local restaurant in your community or the CPA's community where you can hold the event, so they can start to visualize that as well. And you always want to remind the CPA guys, you and your staff are going to do all the heavy lifting, right? So for these mailings that we're going to suggest that they consider doing for invitations to client events and such, we don't have an expectation that they're going to stuff envelopes, stamp envelopes, do follow-up calls. We will do all that heavy lifting. Educational seminars. Here you can talk about all the different seminar topics that you have. Review of weekly client contacts for potential cross-servicing opportunities, etc. And also in those meeting agendas, guys, we're going to be educating them on various products and services. We might teach them 1 week about 401ks, another week about SEP plans, another week about Social Security planning, or estate planning, or annuities, or exchange-traded funds. You get the idea. We're there to be an ultimate resource. Let's move to separate activities. And I talk about proactive contact and I talk about passive contact. So proactively, we can identify 3 potential candidates that will benefit from financial planning to try to schedule an appointment. We then, guys, have a script for them. So you're going to be able to show them a script that we've developed. Here it is up on your screen again. So think about it from the CPA's perspective. You're now able to give the CPA a script that says, here is what you have to say, Mr. CPA. I'm going to teach you how to do it. Okay? We want to make this turnkey. We want to make this easy so they believe that you have the plan, and if they follow you, they'll get what they want. CPA will develop a list of influential clients, could include the entire client base, in order to invite them to a client appreciation event where the advisor will be the guest speaker. Again, take a look at your screen. I've scripted for you what you'll say in your opening remarks and what the CPA will say in their opening remarks. This could be a good time to show the CPA the type of seminar that you would present. We have some examples and samples for you as well. Okay, so again, we're showing them how easy it is and how turnkey you've made it. Passive contact. CPA will send out an introductory letter to all clients explaining the expanded service options within their tax practice to include financial planning and the new relationship that's been established between both you and the CPA. Here's a sample of that on your screen. So I've already written a sample letter for you. You can edit it, okay? But the CPA, I want you to visualize yourself in this meeting showing them the complimentary portfolio review certificate, showing them a client appreciation invitation, showing them the seminar script, etc. The CPA is going to be looking at this and saying, my goodness, John's got a plan, or you have a plan for everything. We can utilize a newsletter system. Most advisors have a newsletter. What a great idea it is to send your newsletter to the entire CPA's client base. What better way to build awareness and show additional value from the CPA firm? We can establish a weekly or bi-weekly meeting with the CPA and advisor to discuss potential clients matched and potential topics to implement a targeted mailing campaign. So in other words, we can consider an older demographic of clients hitting with information about estate planning or hitting with information about long-term care as an example. Younger folks might be buying a home or college planning. I think you get the concept. Establish a quarterly educational seminar series. The CPA can include the complimentary portfolio review certificate in any 1040 mailings. Hyperlinking websites. Guys, this is such an easy one. Think about the value in today's age. Clients are constantly on professionals' websites. When I forget a telephone number, I go on my phone, right, on my smartphone, and I Google the person's name, and I go to the company, and I get that phone number. So if all of a sudden there's a tab on the CPA's website that says financial planning, click here, and it hyperlinks to your website. What better way to build endorsed leads to your practice? And the CPA should brand his or her office with your materials. Especially during tax season, guys, CPA's offices are unbelievably busy. Every lobby, if possible, of a CPA's office that you build a relationship with should be staffed, right? So what do I mean when I say that? How about your bio? How about an advertisement for your upcoming seminar? How about one of the complimentary portfolio certificates that I mentioned? Let me ask you this question, guys. If you're a CPA and you need to get a brochure on estate planning or on Social Security or on retirement plans, how do you get it if you're a CPA? The answer is, for most, they buy it. Now, for most of us in the financial services industry, how do you get it? You call your home office and they have a stock of supplies for us, or you go online and you print a downloadable version. So one of the things that I always suggest is allow the CPA to utilize your brochures in their lobby. It saves them money, and on every brochure, you're going to have your business card attached or your contact information, which is a real easy way to ultimately build awareness of who you are. Accountability. I'm not going to read everything to you guys here, but from an accountability perspective, you can see that we're thinking about accountability and how the weekly meetings will go between the CPA and the advisor. It's an important part of the process. We can discuss potential topics and event options, whether it be client appreciation events, a dinner, a sporting event, could be a cigar night, a wine tasting, a cooking class. We want to appeal to things that the CPA likes to do and they believe their clients might like to do. Educational seminars, retirement planning, income strategies, wealth transfer, specific product presentations. The ideas are obviously limitless. From a private dining event perspective, I've already mentioned a few of these: Broadway shows, wine tastings, chef tables, etc. And then what I do here, guys, and I'm not going to spend our time here, I think you can read this on your own and get the idea, but we have an expected activity and results. So I'm actually showing the CPA, if we do these activities, what we can actually accomplish from a client acquisition perspective, and ultimately what that could mean in the form of revenue to the practice. And you have to be the judge of whether or not it's appropriate to move that quickly. So I want you to think about this for a minute, guys, and I want you to ask yourself this question. Who has this stuff, right? What advisor really would take the time? I want you to think about it from the CPA's perspective. They don't realize you've joined my coaching company. They don't realize that your goal is to build 3 to 5 relationships with accounting firms in your area. They're looking at this saying, my goodness, this particular advisor is unbelievably prepared. He or she has a plan, and if I follow this person, my clients and I will benefit. And I think if you think about it and you kind of step outside of this training video right now and go, man, how would that CPA feel? He or she will be unbelievably impressed, and that's exactly what I want to accomplish. I want them to feel as if they follow you, they're going to get exactly what they want. What I want to do now is I'm going to put up on the screen what we've created, if appropriate, where we can start to give the CPA a understanding of what this can mean from a financial perspective. Right, and again, depending on how this conversation goes, if they're bought in and saying, hey, I'd love to do a client appreciation event, or I love that mailing idea, if they're starting to buy in, what we really want to do now is we want to have what I call the 3-option discussion, and we want to follow the 3-option discussion up depending on how they react to it, potentially with some financial data that can illustrate how they can be compensated if that's one of the 3 options they choose. So the 3-option discussion is only when we're starting to see some buy-in, right, and the CPA is engaged. And if we're going through this marketing plan, guys, it's probably very appropriate to have the 3-option discussion unless they're giving you some pushback in this particular meeting. So as you can see on your screen, the 3-option discussion is a script that we've created to really help ensure that we let the CPA know that they have a choice in how we're going to ultimately work together. So I'm going to walk you through that now. So Ken, we really have 3 options to work together. You know, what I'll call is option 1, which is really what I would call the traditional handshake. This is when you and I agree that if I come across someone who needs your advice, I would suggest you. And if you come across someone who would benefit from my advice, you'd suggest me. We'll call that option 1. Option 2 is really what I would call creating kind of a semi-exclusive relationship. In essence, we'd both continue to work with other professionals, but we'd agree that we would both take the time to learn about each other's practices. We'd agree to meet regularly and discuss potential referral opportunities, joint marketing, and really become advocates to help each other's businesses grow. Last would be option 3, which is really basically the same as what I described in option 2, except that we'd create some exclusivity in our relationship, and you would be able to be compensated. There's really a couple of different ways that you can be compensated, whether it be a referral fee, whether it be a solicitor agreement, or whether it be you getting fully licensed. What I could share with you is this. You know, I'm really not interested in option one. I'm sure you'd agree. I probably have about 100 different business cards of professionals that I've met over the years. We've shook hands. We've agreed to refer clients back and forth, and ultimately, nothing's ever happened. Based on what you share with me about your practice, I'd be really excited about entering into a relationship with you and your firm under either option two or option three. Let me ask, which would you be most comfortable with, either option two or option three? So I want you to think about that script for a minute, guys, right? And I want you to also understand sometimes that script will come into play earlier in the third meeting. Quite frankly, it could come into play in the first meeting, depending on buying signals. And that's true with a lot of our scripts. You need to master the scripts and the concepts. It's not for you to deliver them verbatim. Those are my words. They don't have to be your words. But it's for you to take those concepts and to be able to weave them into your sales process. So I find most often if things progress as they should, it's a script that we would use in meeting three right after, sometimes before, but usually after we've gone through the idea of a marketing plan. And the reason for that is the CPA is now excited. They see you have a plan. What I want to hear is there's three options. What I've done in essence is I took one away, right? Because I do that purposefully because I want the accountant to also understand that I get it. And I want he or she to get it, that this is not going to be the traditional relationship that he or she have had over their career. It's going to be different, right? It can't be a handshake and let's refer back and forth because we know that doesn't work. I want them to know that I'm smart enough and they should be smart enough to understand that that's just not going to work. Now, whether they choose to be semi-exclusive or exclusive really has no difference to me. If you notice, both of those options require meeting regularly, weekly or biweekly interaction, which, as you know, is the name of the game and how we will build reciprocity. So my experience tells me about 80% of the time, which option do you think they choose? They choose option two, right? Option two is dating, not getting married, right? And that's the safe bet and what most will choose. But what's beautiful about that particular script is you have to choose one of the two, right? Now, it's possible that the CPA would say, well, I'm not interested in any of it, or I want to stick with option one. But I could tell you from my experience, if they've gone this far along, most of the time they're going to pick option two. Some of the time they're going to pick option three. If they pick option two, we're very pleased with that. We're going to simply say, I agree. I think that's a great place to start. We just went through our joint marketing plan. Let's get together again and let's come up with, obviously we're not going to implement the entire marketing plan. Let's meet again next week and let's pick an idea or two, whatever you're comfortable with, and let's start to take baby steps and proceed with this relationship. If we get there, guys, I'm totally pleased. Your sales process is actually over. We got them where we wanted. It's now just building that relationship and that trust level and getting them to see you in action so that ultimately we get to a place where they're going to ultimately want to potentially move to option three and revenue sharing or a true alliance. If they never get there, that's absolutely fine as well. If they meet you regularly, do events, follow parts of our marketing plan, you're going to be good for some great client acquisition. Your business is going to be growing. And quite frankly, if they don't want to get compensated, it becomes more profitable to you and your practice anyhow, right? Although my goal is for them to ultimately have an alliance and get compensated because I personally believe that's how things work best. Quick story I want to share with you before I move on, okay? And just to kind of set the tone here, I want to go through the story and then I'm going to come back and I want to walk you through if the CPA, that 20% of the time when they're going to choose option number three and they want to get exclusive and share revenue, I want to show you something that we've built to walk them through what that could look like. But most of the time I don't think that we're going to get there. But from a story perspective, and my story is around helping you to see how getting the CPA to do something will ultimately help you to move the relationship forward. So I'm going to tell you a story about a CPA that my firm works with, and the CPA's name is Jerry. And when I did the first meeting with Jerry, and this goes back, almost a decade ago at this point, when I sat in Jerry's office for our first meeting and came to visit him, here was Jerry. His arms were crossed, and he kind of looked at me like this, and I believe he said something like, if you're here to try to get referrals from my clients, you're in the wrong place. That's how the meeting started. So I went through my meeting in my regular course of how I would normally do a meeting, and it went pretty well. And by the end of that meeting, Jerry actually agreed to come in for a second visit. So he came and checked out my operation. He followed the process. He was impressed. He still had no interest in an alliance. I went through the 3-option discussion, and what Jerry's feedback to me was, I don't want anything exclusive, but he really liked the idea of doing an event. Right? He thought that that was great. He had recently purchased the practice, so it was also a great way for him to meet some of his new clients. And he agreed to do an event, and we used the client appreciation event invitation that I put up on the screen before that you'll have access to. We mailed to his client base, and make a long story short, we wound up having about 60 or so of his clients in the room. I went on stage. I did a 20-minute presentation or so. The end of my presentation, guys, here's what happened. After I'm done presenting, a lot of times what I do is I head right over to the bar. So I walked over to the bar when I was done with my presentation, and I went to the bartender to order a drink. And what I saw, and what Jerry was able to see, was about 6 or 7 of his clients followed me over to the bar. The first client came over, and I'm making this up at this point, guys. I don't remember exactly what they said, but the first client said something like, hey, if Jerry thinks that you're good, I want you to manage all my money. I have my money at XYZ brokerage firm right now. I said, that's great. Second client came up and said, I'm retiring next month. I have $1 million put away for my future. I want to come in and meet with you. Third client came over and said something similar. I think you guys get the idea. At the end of that 6 or 7 person line, guess who was standing there? It was Jerry. Jerry, by the way, is about 6'3", 6'4", a lot taller than I am. And he kind of put his arm around me, and he looked down at me, and here's what he said. He goes, hey, John, I know I told you that I don't want to get compensated. I don't want to do anything formal. But after seeing you tonight, I think it would be a great idea, and I'd like to go out and I'd like to join your full alliance program and ultimately get compensated. So why am I sharing that story with you? Jerry had to see me in action. He had to see his clients react to me. And quite frankly, he saw the gravy train walking out the door. He saw his clients wanting to work with me and realized that it was due to his influence. And what he also realized is when he put me in front of his clients, they actually reacted to me positively. So the reason I share that with you is if we get the accountant to do something, the odds are in your favor that they're going to come along and they're going to ultimately fold into your program the way that you want them to. We just have to be patient enough to ultimately get them to do something. Okay? So I like stories. I want you to remember the story of Jerry, and hopefully that will really ring home the power of getting the CPA to take any kind of baby step possible. So let's move forward and let's go and talk a little bit here about what compensation can look like, okay? And again, a lot of times this will happen in the 4th meeting. In fact, more often than not, it will ultimately happen in the 4th meeting. But this is for a CPA who's really, really engaged. So when we have a CPA who's really very, very engaged, I'm going to put up on the screen a simple little spreadsheet or matrix that we've created as a tool that helps illustrate compensation. Okay, so what you see up on your screen here is what I call the revenue projection example, and you'd obviously put the firm's name there. Now, I want to remind you guys, more often than not, this is not going to happen in the 3rd meeting. So I'm showing it to you in the 3rd meeting because it will occur sometimes. As I go through meeting 4 momentarily, the concept more often than not would be a meeting 4 opportunity to go through this particular piece. But when it's appropriate, I want you to be prepared. Again, I'm going to kind of ring home the concept here. Who has this stuff? If I am a CPA and I'm following along up to this point, I am going to be unbelievably impressed that you've actually taken the time as an advisor to be able to illustrate this particular concept of how they can get compensated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change some of these variables. So what I would usually do in a meeting like this is I would say to the CPA, I'd say, so Ken, I think you had mentioned you have about 350 clients. Is that correct? And Ken would say, yeah, that's exactly right. I have 350 clients. And as you can see on your screen, I'm going to type in here 350 clients. I'm also going to say, my experience tells me that over 5 years or so, we generally have an expected conversion rate, meaning about 20 to 40% of your tax clients will become our joint financial planning clients if we follow our marketing plan and do this well. And I'd say, Ken, what would you like to plan for? Let's say, as an example, Ken said 20%. He was on the low end, conservative. So I would plug that number in, and if I put 20% in on 350 clients, as you can see, what would happen is my spreadsheet here would tell me that we would ultimately have about 70 financial planning clients. And if I had 70 financial planning clients, the next question that I would ask Ken is I would say, what would the average assets per clients work out to be? And let's assume for a second that I said the average assets per client were going to be, let's say it would be $300,000, okay? And whatever the CPA says is what we put in there. So we have $300,000 of assets, we have a 20% conversion rate, and we have, which would help us acquire about 70 financial planning clients. The next question that I'm going to ask is, what would the average annual net fee per client be? And I would tell the CPA that generally we charge somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's say, 1.25%. We would answer that question on our own because the CPA probably doesn't know that answer, and we'd put 1.25% in there. And I'd hit this button, and what you then see is that my spreadsheet's going to ultimately calculate. And as you can see, the only other variable that we would put in there is the CPA payout rate. Now, what I want to be really clear of here is on the CPA payout rate, I'm giving you a range of 15 to 30%. Now, it can be more, it can be less. This is your decision. My belief is somewhere between 15 to 30% is what I believe is a fair split that you can give the CPA. Now, that's a payout rate in my mind, not a split of commission, but actually a payout rate. Now, I want to be really careful. I'm going to send you this spreadsheet as an editable version. I'm going to send it with you, and it's going to say, in brackets, as you see in front of you, 15 to 30%. Now, when you show this to the CPA, please make sure that you erase that 15 to 30%. I've had advisors make that mistake, right? So obviously, if you give someone an option between 15 and 30%, they're going to choose the 30%. So you want to put the number in that you want to offer. If it was 20%, let's say, you just simply have the 20% number in there and don't give them a choice. So let's put 20% in there as an example. And as you can see, what happens is it's going to give us a 1 through 5 year compensation example. And it's going to show you what that CPA's compensation can be. You can see the numbers for yourself. I don't need to read them to you. What they would earn in year 1, year 2, and obviously through year 5. Now, the other piece that I want to point out, as you can see, is that the only assumption that we make is that every year the assets grow by 8%, or better yet, I should say the revenue stream grows by 8% on the existing assets under management. So year 1 gets compounded by 8%, which in year 2 gets compounded by 8% again, and we continue to add, as you can see. Pretty self-explanatory. And as you can see on the spreadsheet, it becomes fairly lucrative to the CPA. And I want you to remember, we talked in one of our first sessions here, we talked about the fact that the average accounting firm does not make quite as much money as we think, or I should say the average accountant in an accounting firm. So this extra 10 or 20 or 50 or $100,000 of net revenue to the bottom line of their firm has a huge impact on the bottom line. And I'll share with you guys, when you get to this point in the process and you're actually able to show the CPA what some income numbers can look like, you're pretty much there. This is going to help them hook, line, and sinker really become engaged. And what I find they do a lot is they say, well, what would happen if the clients only had $100,000 each? Or what if we converted more or less or whatever it may be? So this is just used as a guide. Obviously, it's never going to be 100% accurate, but I can tell you that the accountants really get engaged with this and start to ask a lot of questions, and it becomes a demonstration, and they start to visualize the income that they can earn, which helps them to get a lot more committed, I should say, to the process as a whole. So the last thing I want to talk about, guys, and as you can tell, meeting 3, I spent a lot of time on. It is the most important meeting. It is the meeting that will make or break your relationship, and it's the hardest meeting, in my opinion, for you as the advisor to do. So this is a part that really, really becomes important, that you internalize where you're trying to go and that you fully have command of the scripts and the concepts that I've illustrated to you. So what I want to close with is another script, which is really trying to make sure that at this point, or this juncture, I should say, that we have our full commitment. So I'm going to put this script up on the screen as well. So we call this script, don't put the cart before the horse. And this is really where we want to ultimately get their buy-in. It's our last takeaway at this point to ensure that they really want to move forward after we've explained what the marketing plan is, what the potential compensation can be, etc. So here's what this sounds like. And you're only going to use this if the meeting's going well. So I'm going to say something along the lines of, Ken, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but based on our conversation and what you shared with me, I think we can both see the potential in integrating financial planning services into your tax practice. However, I also think as business people, we should take a step back for a moment and really make sure that we're both comfortable and that we've done enough due diligence on each other's financial firms. I'd like to invite you back one more time to my office and take you through our systems and structure again to really ensure that my practice is something that you fully understand. Does that sound reasonable? Now, guys, at this point, what are we hoping for? Right? We're hoping for the CPA to say, hey, John, honestly, I feel so good about you. I don't need to do that again. We're all good. Let's put this to bed and let's start to move forward, right? And at that point in time, that's exactly where we want to be. We're going to then move on to our 4th meeting, and I'm going to simply close this meeting by saying that's great. I think our next steps are to really finalize a marketing plan, to schedule our weekly or bi-weekly meetings, and really start to put pen to paper or pencil to paper, so to speak, and really start to treat this as a business. And then obviously we're going to talk about how excited we are, et cetera, et cetera. So, guys, I'm going to stop there here for meeting 3. As I said, it's a ton of information. And what I want to do briefly is I want to summarize for you really what the intent of meeting 3 is, okay? Because it's a lot, and I want to make sure you're getting all of the learning points here. So I want you to think about it this way again. It is, in my opinion, the most critical meeting. You're going to need to use your sales skills and your listening skills to understand exactly where we want to take that meeting, right? We're going to start it off by reiterating how we ultimately close our lunch meeting, our meeting 3 lunch meeting, and we want to reiterate the significance and the how critical it is that we agree to 2 things. We agree to meet on a regular basis, and we agree to begin to plan what the end goal is. What's the end in mind, right? What is it that we're trying to plan? We're going to start the meeting that way, just to make it really simple. That's the beginning of our 3rd meeting. We're then going to choose one of our 2 scripts, right? Our script, which I'm going to call script A, is going to be our script that is for someone who needs to be brought on a little bit more slowly. And our goal there is to get them to do one of 2 things. The first and most important is meet regularly, and if possible, help them make one small step. To be really clear, if we have to go the option of our A script, at that point in time, guys, we're not moving any more forward in meeting three. Meeting three is pretty much done, and all we now want to do is get them into a meeting on a regular basis. There's no need to go through a joint marketing plan in a lot of detail outside of an idea or two. There's no need to talk about compensation. We're simply going to take the cue from them, agree to meet on a regular basis, and begin the education process, because I know we need to deepen that relationship a little bit more. If they were engaged enough for us to go into our B script, which means they're much more engaged, we're then going to go through a marketing plan. We're going to remind them that in that marketing plan, this is not something we have to do everything. It's for illustrative purposes only. And at the end of the day, we want to pick a couple of ideas that they're comfortable with and pick a few things to ultimately implement. At the end of that, we want to make sure that we give them the ability to see what could be in it for them. When we go through our three option discussion, we're going to give them a choice. We're going to eliminate one option, which is the traditional handshake deal. They could choose semi-exclusive or exclusive. And again, exclusive means a professional alliance relationship. If they choose semi-exclusive, we don't need to go through compensation, right? If they choose semi-exclusive, we're going to talk about a soft marketing plan, and we're going to meet again to start to build a marketing plan that they're in agreement with. If they are to choose an alliance and really want to move forward, right there in meeting three, we can go through some compensation. We can go through the spreadsheet that we spoke about, and at that point, we know we have an alliance. So I just wanted to kind of give you these different options and show it to you kind of graphically, because as I've said a bunch of times, this is the critical make or break meeting. This is what's going to influence the relationship going forward. And it's just like that dating analogy that I had given earlier in today is, right, are we going in for the hug? Is it a peck on a cheek? Or are we going for the gusto? So with that, guys, this concludes our meeting three section, and we're going to be back momentarily to start to speak about how we operate in meeting four.